is not just about people, but people and places. Now that your 3 or 4 years at Hull have come to an end, its sites and places will become fond memories. Before the graduation ceremony, there's time for a last look at the city and at the university. The Marina and King Edward Street are the two examples of the way in which Hull has changed, marrying the old and the new at the town centre. The university has one of the most pleasant campuses among the red brick universities, being neither too claustrophobic nor too spacious. Above all, the campus has a friendly atmosphere, which many visitors comment upon. There's no doubt that afternoons spent chatting outside the library will be remembered far more than the academic life. The Students' Union is the heart of campus life and caters for all tastes. Afternoons in the wheat sheaf, quiz nights in the bar, clubs and societies, all are welcome diversions from work. The Bryn Mawr Jones Library has a panoramic view of Hull and its surrounding area, providing a welcome distraction from work and a handy way of gauging the weather. We've all experienced university accommodation at one time or another, be it in a student house or hall of residence. The university's most recent development, the luxurious Taylor Court, is even more handy. The only on-campus accommodation is a mere 1 minute from the temptation of the Union bars and most lecture theatres. Ferrens Hall? Old Ferranians in particular will look back fondly on the peace and tranquility of their days in this hall, caught here in one of its quieter moments. The Lawns houses the largest number of students, and its division into halls and blocks creates a friendly and relaxed atmosphere amid the toga parties and the lawn extravaganzas. Thwaite Hall can be described as the most civilized of university accommodation, hosting strawberry teas in the summer and a formal ball at Christmas. Set in magnificent grounds, it's ideal for exam recoveries. And so back to the City Hall, the final destination for all students, for the finishing touch to their degree course.
My Lord and Chancellor, I call upon the Deans of the schools and presenting officers to present candidates for degrees.
I confer upon each candidate present the degree as listed in the official record.
My Lord and Chancellor, for the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa, Barbara Mills, QC.
My Lord and Chancellor, it is still a regrettable feature of British public life that only a very small number of women achieve recognition by taking leadership roles in their professions or their organizations. However, Mrs. Barbara Mills clearly is one of those women who have succeeded, and if one may say so, in her case more than once. Barbara Mills was educated in Middlesex and at Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford, where she was a scholar. She has retained her links with Oxford and indeed shown her interest in the field of higher education by becoming an honorary fellow of Lady Margaret Hall in 1991. However, most of her professional life has been dedicated to legal practice. She was called to the bar in 1963, and she became a barrister in private practice shortly afterwards, initially specializing in criminal trials, with an emphasis on what has become known as white-collar crime, involving mainly criminal commercial cases. In the years which followed, she became a prosecuting counsel to the Inland Revenue and a Treasury counsel. Her achievements in her field received due recognition when, in 1982, she became a recorder or judge of the Crown Court, and in 1986, when she took silk and became a Queen's Counsel. In recognition of the tried and tested principle that if you want a job to be done properly, you should give it to the busiest person you know, Barbara Mills took on a number of additional responsibilities. In 1986, she was appointed a Department of Trade and Industry Inspector under Section 177 of the Financial Services Act. In 1988, she became a member of the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board. Also in 1988, she was appointed legal assessor to the General Medical Council and the General Dental Council. And in 1990, she became a member of the Parole Board. Again in 1990, she was made a bencher of the Middle Temple. And in 1991, she became a member of the General Advisory Council of the BBC. However, it is through what I might be permitted to call her two last main jobs that she has achieved greatest public prominence. In 1990, she was appointed director of the Serious Fraud Office. When, 2 years later, the position of Director of Public Prosecutions became vacant, it was advertised in the media for the first time, and Barbara Mills was the first woman to be appointed to this crucial post in the British criminal justice system. As DPP, she is head of the Crown Prosecution Service, an organization with 6,000 members of staff, including 2,000 lawyers. The CPS is, as Barbara Mills has pointed out, the largest law firm in the country, handling some 1.5 million cases per annum. At a time when the criminal justice system is being subjected to unprecedented public scrutiny, Barbara Mills has adopted a policy of assessing and emphasizing the ethical dimension of her role and that of the CPS. Shortly after her appointment, she told the annual convention of the Institute of Directors in 1992 that her aims for the CPS were independence, even-handedness, integrity and fairness, together with efficiency and effectiveness, in the interests of witnesses, victims and defendants. She emphasized her commitment to social justice by taking the CPS into Opportunity 2000, an initiative designed to open up opportunities for women in business and in employment. Barbara Mills has made an enormous contribution to the public life of this country in areas of major concern to all its citizens. I have no doubt that many more achievements are yet to come, and I sincerely hope that these can be combined with what she lists as her recreation, my family, her husband and 4 children. My Lord and Chancellor, I have the honor, and it gives me the greatest personal pleasure, to present Mrs. Barbara Mills, QC, for the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
My Lord and Chancellor, I have the honor to present the following candidates from the School of Humanities. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Jill Margaret Aitken. Mark Andrew Allen. Nicola Shireen Allison. Susan Anderson. Nicholas James Anderton. Kim Teresa Baker. Joanne Bamford. Caroline Jane Barnett. Mita Biswas. Christian Lee Bodley. Tracy Joanne Borman. Corrine Burton. Frances Mary Cardion. Jason Paul Chamberlain. Jocelyn David Stanton Dare. Josephine Teresa Dullahan. Ruth Fairbairn. Gillian Suzanne Firth. David Anthony Founds. Haley Frame. Sarah Franklin. Ruth Gibbons. And for honors in the first class, Richard Christopher Gorski.
Well, this is a very cheerful occasion, and they'd all appreciate any applause or noise you like to make. Many of the other congregations have been much more enthusiastic.
Anthony David George Himmins. Joanna Hicks. Jane Elizabeth Hogarth. Emma Jane Holt. Robert John Hughes. Michael Johnstone. David William Jolly. Julian Carlton Knight. Elliot Lane. Thomas Patrick Lennon. Judith Liddell. And for honors in the first class, Elspeth Yvonne Lown. Julia Ingrid Malthouse. Stephen Charles Martin. Vivian Margaret May. Sarah Jane McCrow. Sarah Margaret McGovern. Joanna Catherine McIntyre Brown. Alistair Roderick Ian McKechnie. Rachel Carey Moriarty. Alice Jane Mossman. Anthony Murden. Richard Philip Murphy. Simon Richard Oates. James Harbottle Padkin. Patricia Mary Pallier. John Ian Pattinson. Elizabeth Angela Porter. Nicholas Andrew Prattley. Samantha Ann Redden. Catherine Jane Reese. Thomas John Charles Rickard. Simon Jeffrey Rose. Philip Ryan. Claire Louise Schmilt. Rachel Ann Shepley. Simon Mark Schott. Andrew Solomon. David Ian Sturdy. Andrea Jane Thompson. Sean Thompson. Howard James Walters. For honors in the first class, Jeremy Philip Aston Wheat. Simon Peter Way. Claire Victoria Wheater. Pamela Wiggin. Gerald Witherington. Benjamin David Wyatt. For the degree of Bachelor of Science, Ian Clifford Miller. For the degree of Bachelor of Theology, John Victor James Donald. Josefina Alida Maria Donald. Alan Fairfield. John Carl Hetherington. For the degree of Master of Arts, Reginald Charles Davies. Philip Roy Down. Rhys Prosser. George Soteropoulos. For the degree of Master of Philosophy, Elizabeth Adela Frederica Hall.
My Lord and Chancellor,
Dr. Lester Graby, you ought to be told, has caused a problem. As Dean of the School of Humanities, we have all just watched him present candidates for degrees. In this same role, he should technically present himself for his degree. I think it was Napoleon who crowned himself emperor, but Dr. Graby has never struck his colleagues as someone who might want to invade Russia. In any case, awarding oneself qualifications might seem a slightly dubious procedure. The honour thus falls to me to present a unique conferment, for Dr. Graby is the first person to be awarded the university's degree of Doctor of Divinity. We award this degree in recognition of the excellence of his work in the field of Old Testament studies, the summit of which, currently, is his 2-volume History of the Jews from Cyrus to Hadrian, a monument of industry and erudition, to cite a world authority on the subject, a mark of excellent, sustained scholarship of the highest order, to cite another. His research has brought national and international distinction to the University of Hull, and it is for this reason, my Lord and Chancellor, that I have the honour to present to you, for the first ever degree of Doctor of Divinity awarded by this university, Dr. Lester Lee Graby.
I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Divinity.
My Lord and Chancellor, for the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa, Sir Roy Griffiths.
My Lord and Chancellor, most members of this audience, whether we are aware of it or not, will be or have been affected by the work of Sir Roy Griffiths, particularly if we choose to shop at Britain's market-leading retailers, Sainsbury's, if we or our relatives are born, treated or die in the National Health Service, or if we or our relatives are supported in times of disability or distress by organisations providing social care. Sir Roy Griffiths has played a pivotal role in the development and future of all of these 3 major institutions of British life. Sir Roy made his initial impact on British public life in the private sector, most notably with J. Sainsbury's plc, which he joined in 1968 and served as Director of Personnel, Managing Director and Deputy Chairman. His marketing skills and commitment to putting the customers at the centre helped Sainsbury's develop from a medium-sized family firm into the leading food retailer in the United Kingdom. Sir Roy was able to transfer the skills and experience which he developed in the private sector to the public sector, becoming effectively a one-man Royal Commission. The characteristic that is generally ascribed to Sir Roy is profound common sense, something that we are rather keen on in Yorkshire. It was his robust ability to cut through complexity that endeared him to Britain's politicians. In 1983, Sir Roy chaired the Management Inquiry into the National Health Service. At that time, the very word manager tended to be used as an insult within the National Health Service, an organisation with a culture that some would say prided itself on ignoring managerial insights and efficiencies. In one of those incisive comments for which Sir Roy is famous, he remarked that if Florence Nightingale was carrying her lamp through the corridors of the NHS today, she would almost certainly be searching for the people in charge. Sir Roy's incisive critique of the NHS can be applied to any leaderless organisation. He commented, "To the outsider, it appears that when change of any kind is required, the NHS is so structured as to resemble a mobile, designed to move with every breath of air, but which in fact never changes its position and gives no clear indication of direction." From his experience of the NHS, Sir Roy enunciated a clear philosophy of general management and stated that, "I believe that running any organisation is about careful intellectualisation at one extreme, working out what is important and setting precise plans and strategies, and at the other extreme, an obsessive urgency of implementation to see that what is planned is actually achieved. It requires, above all, very positive leadership at every level." His report has laid the foundation for the new NHS. Sir Roy has maintained a close watching brief as Deputy Chairman of the NHS Policy Board and advisor to the Government. Having tackled the NHS, it was not long before Sir Roy was invited to tackle the policy confusion known as community care. Sir Roy conducted a major review known variously as the Griffiths Report, Griffiths 2 or Community Care Agenda for Action that quickly and simply analysed the complex confusion, made recommendations and spelt out the consequences of inaction. As Sir Roy noted, community care was a poor relation, everybody's distant relative but nobody's baby. Some of Sir Roy's proposals were less than popular in certain political circles. The report was launched, or perhaps it's better to say set adrift, the day after the bank holiday with no press conference. But Sir Roy clearly believed that the consequences of inaction will be damaging to those individuals and their families who needed but were not receiving appropriate, high-quality community care. His arguments eventually persuaded the Prime Minister. It is in no small way due to his arguments and persistence that the community care legislation was finally implemented this April. Sir Roy is its architect. Sir Roy's career as manager, reformer and policy advisor centres around the relationship of manager and customer. He is aware that practical matters are more important to people than abstract notions. We honour Sir Roy in the European Year of Older People and Solidarity Between Generations, since older people are clearly the major potential beneficiaries of community care reforms. Through his role as President of Age Concern England since 1989, he maintains a close interest in the care of older people and their contribution to society. My Lord and Chancellor, I have the honour to present to you Sir Roy Griffiths for the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Congratulations. Very glad indeed.
I have the honour to present the following candidates from the Law School. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Charlotte Jane Butler. Helena Maria Collins. Ian Bruce Day. Bruce Alistair Gray. Rebecca Louise Gray. Seema Hira. Maria Julie Boop McCann. Bradley Quinn. Caroline Rachel Stitt. Guy Edward Thompson. Rowena Jane Watkins. Sarah Wick. For the degree of Bachelor of Laws, Rahila Akram. Myling Valerie Frida Ang. Jeremy Bailey. Nigel Bakewell. Christian Wolfgang Bartsch. Suzanne Berry. Susan Margaret Billington. Emma Blacklock. Kevin Blackwell. Nigel Timothy Bryan. Jason Andrew Bryan. Gary Henry Bromlow. Karen Lisa Bromley. Georgia Maureen Brooks. Gavin John Button. Amanda Frances Carroll. Louise Roberta Carroll. Duncan Neil Carson. Yu Chung Chi. Evangeline Y. Cheng Chu. David George Christie. Elisa Catherine Clark. Adrian Hannah Jane Cohen. David Michael Thomas Connolly. Jane Elizabeth Darcy. Graham Edward Darwood. Alan Vaughan Davies. Richard Glyn Owen Davies. Edward Alistair David Dempster. Imogen Denton. Mark Simon Dickinson. Paul Anthony Dorian. Christopher John Drabble. Edward Owen Duffield. Damien Carl Dunkley. Susan Catherine Eltz. Daniel Adrian Eyre. Margaret Campbell Ferguson. James Fisher. Adele Ford. Helen Ann Forth. Corin John Furness. Liam Grundy. Glenn Peter Harris. Helen Louise Hurd. Elizabeth Ho. Christine Margaret Hooper. Tahir Jawed. Catherine Elizabeth Johnson. Austin Peter Judson. Barry John Carter. Richard James Kay. Daniel Lee Kern. Michelle Rose Kufur. Cecil Ning Kiang Lao. Cheryl Su Fung Lee. Kim Jim Lim. Teresa Ann Martine Loftus. Nicola Jane Matthews. Peter John McCarthy. Dennis David McHugh. Stephen Matthew McVitie. Paul Derek Medford. Karen Yu-Yen Mock. David Patrick Malloy. Gordon Brian Mullins. Andrew Mukite Musangi. Teresa Marie Noah. Mimi Gaik Mino. Victoria Louise Newton. Claire Elizabeth North. Jean Ivy O'Brien. Matthew Ian Oliver. Yuen Ong. Kate Naomi Parrish. Rafiq Patel. Caroline Ann Powell. Fazia Naz Raja. Michael Anthony Ramsden. Sanjeev Kumar Razia. Vanessa Rickard. Martin David Ridings. Karen Riley. Lynn Diane Roberts. Rebecca Jane Roberts. Joanne Louise Robinson. Julie Ann Room. Shanti Lorraine Samuel. Deborah Louise Sansom. Lynette Shakantula Sathyasinga. Ian Richard Seabury. Ming Macy So. Rosalind Jane Shaw. Deborah Stevens. Christopher John Tagg. Su Yin Tang. Sarah Teal. Patsy Nicole Cho. Sue Ing Josephine Cho. Lisa Claire Thompson. Andrew James Thornton. Chin Ming T. Suzanne Jane Waterfield. Peter Wangaki Wiener. And for honours in the first class, Lisa Ann Whitehouse. Ian John Whitehurst. Mary Catherine Charlotte Wilkinson. Elisa Jane Willows. Mark Withington. Nai Chi Wong. Julie Ann Wright. Charmaine Swan May Yo. Christopher Shu Wei Yon. For the degree of Master of Laws, Michael Acevedo Morley. Maria Meseritaki. Leslie Patricia O'Donnell. Yvonne Antoinette Studeman.
My Lord and Chancellor, for the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa, Professor Trevor Smith.
My Lord and Chancellor, this part of today's ceremony is to honour celebrated men and women. Henry Kissinger once said that the best part of being a celebrity is that when you bore people, they think it's their fault. But Trevor Smith is not that kind of celebrity. He'll never bore you, and he could be presented to this congregation today for any one of a dazzling array of achievements. He could, for example, be presented for his achievements in university management. He is currently the esteemed Vice-Chancellor of the University of Ulster, and despite his relatively short period in that office, is recognised as a most energetic and effective manager, leading, for example, innovations in teaching method, distance learning programs, and independent study modules that will ensure the quality of teaching in his university despite these very difficult funding times and squeezed resources. He has also pioneered an association between the University of Ulster and the United Nations University to launch a joint international programme on conflict resolution and ethnicity. This is a shining example of the way in which a university with vision can respond swiftly to issues of current concern by contributing its academic skills to a dialogue that concerns perhaps the major threat to international peace and security today. In an earlier part of his career, at Queen Mary College London from 1967 to 1992, he not only took the founding chair of political studies, but as pro-principal and later senior pro-principal, he played a leading role in the merger of Queen Mary College and Westfield College. He took a prominent part in the merger of the pre-medical schools of St Bartholomew's and the London hospitals, and in a slightly different capacity instigated the merger of the journals The New Statesman and New Society in 1988. All this earned him the title of the Merger Master. We hope sincerely we do not need to avail ourselves of those qualities here in Hull. He might also be presented for his skills in the business world as both director and manager. He's held directorships in Job Ownership Limited, New Society Limited, Statesman and Nation Publishing Co Limited, and has from 1992 been a director of G. Duckworth & Co. For these and other achievements, he was elected a companion of the British Institute of Management only last year. He also has a distinguished record of public service in the areas of health and of religion. He was a member and later vice chairman of the Tower Hamlets District Health Authority, vice chairman of the governors of the Princess Alexandra Newham College of Nursing and Midwifery. He has been a mental health manager and is currently vice president of the Patients Association of the United Kingdom. He was also a member of the Wilson Area Synod from 1985 to 1988. Any one of these, my Lord and Chancellor, would qualify Trevor Smith for an honorary degree. But there are two other areas of achievement which are closer to home. that make him a particularly worthy and deserving recipient of an honorary degree from the University of Hull. The first is his contribution to the academic discipline of politics and to the development of the Department of Politics in our own university, which only this year received a grade 5, the highest grade possible, for its research performance. Trevor Smith took his first degree from the London School of Economics in 1958. There followed a brief career as a school teacher in London, a short spell as an assistant lecturer at the University of Exeter, and a 2-year period as a researcher in the Acton Society Trust. In 1962, he was appointed to a lectureship in politics at the University of Hull. He was one of the founding members of the department, which in the 1960s contained a group of young scholars, all of whom, like him, have gone on to distinguished careers as academics and university managers. His reputation as a scholar who has stretched the boundaries of his discipline was established here at Hull University. And his work has been acknowledged most eloquently in W.H. Greenleaf's monumental work, The British Political Tradition, in the following way, and I quote, "What is required is intimated, however, by 2 types of book. The first is the kind which aims precisely both to present a general view of institutions and relate this to cognate developments in political thought. There are too few of these studies of recent note, but those that exist are admirable and point the way. And like everyone working in this field, I must acknowledge my great indebtedness to them. I have in mind 4 particular works: A.H. Birch on representative and responsible government, Samuel Beers, modern British politics, and Trevor Smith's analysis of anti-politics and his later The Politics of the Corporate State. Like Bacon, these serve the office of bell ringers, first up to call others to church. The mere fact that Trevor Smith's works account for 50% of those important works cited by Greenleaf is praise indeed. And Trevor Smith's standing in the discipline of politics was further recognised by his election to the chairmanship of the Political Studies Association of the United Kingdom for 1988 to 89, and also by his current position as president of that association. My Lord and Chancellor, let me not give the impression that Trevor Smith is all serious academic and hard-boiled manager. He can, of course, be both of these. He is also a good colleague, a giver of trenchant advice, and a considerable wit. As a junior lecturer in the Department of Politics in the 1960s, I was responsible for admissions to the department and was concerned to recruit students with the right kind of innovation. I turned to my senior Trevor Smith for advice. "Don't worry," he said. "The scramble to get into university is going to be so bad in the next few years that students will put up with anything, even an education." And he was, of course, right. He was also a regular attender at degree congregations in this very hall, and he made a particular point of meeting the students' parents after the awards. And I asked him why he did this. It helps me to forgive their children," he said. And that too was probably right. The second particular reason for wishing to honour Trevor Smith today is his long association with Yorkshire, especially with the York-based Joseph Rowntree Reform Trust. Trevor Smith has been associated with the Trust since 1975 and has now risen to be its chairman. His contributions here are legion and have included the funding of research assistance for the opposition political parties. But I think the 2 that he would cherish most, and certainly will mark his contribution to the wider field of politics, was his advice and the support he gave for the launch of Amnesty International and for the Friends of the Earth. These, I think, will be an abiding monument to his wider political activity. My Lord and Chancellor, a man of such learning, drive and compassion is indeed welcome in our community of honorary graduates, and it's a great personal pleasure and privilege to present Trevor Arthur Smith for the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa.
I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa. Congratulations.
My Lord and Chancellor, I have the honour to present the following candidates from the School of the Social and Political Sciences. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Jason Adams. Matthew Anthony Anderson. Sarah Anderson. Adrian Stephen Arkless. Jeremy Elmer Bacon. Stephanie Louise Bamford. Simon John Banks. John Neil Barwick. Nicola Jane Bate. Michael Charles Batson. John William Berry. Nicholas James Blinko. Adrian Alex Brotherton. Claire Elizabeth Brown. Stephen Andrew Brown. Paul William Burgess. Andrew William Burton. Joan Marie Campbell. Simon David Campling. Sean Paul Carter. Simon David Chalice. Yi Wa Lucia Chan. Vivian Caroline Cheetham. With honours in the first class, Christopher John Child. John Fraser Chisholm. Holly Jane Clarkson. Maria Tilly Calasso. Philip Anthony Cook. Sharon Cooper.
Peachy Cox,
Kate Elizabeth Dale, Joanne Elizabeth Daniels, Stephanie Louise Davison, Kirsty Nicola Dawes, Giles David Deards,
Suzanne Penelope Deegan, Rachel Leslie Denham,
Sanjeev Dahand, Gillian Michelle Doherty,
Suzanne Drake, Suzanne Claire Eccles, Peter Matthew Dennis Eddington, Samuel John Elliott, Paul Richard Fairfowl, Amanda Jane Farmer, Dawn Foster, with honours in the first class, Ian St John Foster, David Richard Foy, Daniel James Fulbrook, Sarah Elizabeth Gillickson, Anne Glue, Deborah Juliet Godsobel, Andrew Filmer John Gould, Nicholas John Green, Philip David Hancock, Simon Paul Hankinson, Juliet Ann Harrison, Catherine Mary Haskell, John Christopher Haynes, Melanie Elizabeth Haynes, Lindsay Ann Haywood, Simon David Hendley, John Anthony Hesketh, Sharon Marie Hockin, Jane Christine Hodgson, With honours in the first class, Rebecca Trudy Hodgson. Kate Elizabeth Holliday. Naomi Elizabeth Hollingshead. Mark James Hollis. Penelope Jane Hopkins. Robin Dale Hutchison. Sean Jones. Matthew Charles Kearney. Deborah Ann King. Timothy Henry Kirk. James Gordon Knight. Sarah Jane Kidd. Sarah Ann Lancashire. Gillian Mary Limedorfer. Chrissy Leyland. Catherine Elizabeth Litchfield. Joanne Louise Livesey. Helen Yvonne Louth. Sasha Mary McFarlane. Gemma Jacanetta Manley. Gavin James Marshall. Rachel Elizabeth Maynard. Malcolm James McCallion. Catherine Mary McLennan. Adeline Mackay. Donna Joanne McLaughlin. David Roy Melwish. Angus William Reed Miller. Claire Kelly Mitchell. David Duncan Morrison. Stephen Richard Mosey. With honours in the first class, Emma Margaret Neesham. Margaret Chibonham of Akanzi. Deborah Hazel Oram. Simon Charles Parkinson. Charlotte Grace Patterson. Nicholas John Pendry. Rachel Jane Phillips. Evelyn Picanatari, Sean Pittman, Amy Jennifer Poulsen, Helen Ruth Powell, Andrew William Price, Anastasia Elizabeth Prokofiev, Prem Kumar Rajaram, Punt. Robert William Punt, Hunter. With honours in the first class, Michael John Reed. Adrian Riley. Gordon Riddell. John Roberts. John Sager. Jane Elizabeth Saunders. Andrew Daniel Schlenker. Andrew William Sennett. Robert Charles Seymour. Kashara Dominic Sebastian Francis Sharifi. Kerry Ann Sheehan.
This is a slow one.
Right. Kevin Joseph Shickwin. Nicola Kathleen Smart. Jocelyn Gresty Smith. Nicholas Charles Stace. Matthew Giles Benedict Staples. Stephanie Edwina Stapleton. Catherine Louise Stead. Claire Juliana Stevenson. Lisa Joanne Stevenson. Neil Stewart. Joanne Elizabeth Stiles. Kit Mai Suen. Andrew Gary Taylor. Emma Jane Taylor. Matthew Robert Taylor. Simon John Taylor. Ian Marcus Tebb. Isabel Teller. With honours in the first class, Christine Thackeray. With honours in the first class, Linda Tyndall. Samantha Michelle Tomlinson. Dawn Tosley. Stephen Liam Trask. Emma May Turner. Malinka Janine van der Gouw. Adam Paul van der Mark. Choranda Sarindri Mandinka Vadugud Apitiya. James Robert Waghorn. Emma Jane Waite. Alison Jean Wakefield. Sarah Elaine Walker. With honours in the first class, Julia Warburton. Zoe Karen Ward. Kerry Joanne Wardle. Andrew James Whittaker. Byron Kelly Whittaker. Judith Clare Wilkinson. Christopher Wilson. Matthew Peter Winfield. Anna Louise Wolstenholme. Wah Kit Wong. Stephen John Woodfield. Shirley Ann Woods. Sarah Ann Ragg. Lisa K. Wrigley. Stephen David Wiley. With honours in the first class, Claire Jane Yeatman. Yukari Yoshisawa. For the degree of Master of Arts, Graham Anthony Biddle.
What's it? Are you?
Andrew Roger Young. Deborah Brooke. Okay. With distinction, Claire Elizabeth Andrews. Didapon Dorasoria. Evre Dupuis. Catherine Ann Tina Harrison. Marilyn Josephson.
สมภพแก้วจินดา สมภพแก้วจินดา
Sompop Khadija.
Mahmood Mbembe.
Mahmood Membet. Simon Peter McMullen. Clive Bernard Reid. Peter Wash. Philip Russell Watson. Linda Wooters. For the degree of Master of Philosophy, Festus Alodipa Andreli. For the degree of Master of Science, Lynn Margaret Howard. Fowie Philip Howard Claydon Ladbury. Jeff Moody. Zesh Fung Fowie Nuk. Carol Ann Power. Anne-Marie Jacqueline Ruston. For the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, for thesis on juvenile delinquency in Saudi Arabia, Abdul Aziz Al-Shelthri. For thesis on housing and social change in Saudi Arabia, Abdul Al-Omari. For thesis on rural credit policy in Thailand, Jacqueline Francis Fox.
My Lord and Chancellor, I have the honour to ask you to confer degrees in absentia on those graduands listed in the official records who have qualified and otherwise complied with the statutes, ordinances and regulations of the University.
I confer in absentia the degrees listed in the official record on those graduands who have qualified and are eligible to receive their degree but are not present. Just before the Vice-Chancellor addresses the congregation, I permit myself to make two remarks. The first is to congratulate most warmly our new graduates on the degrees which they have attained today. It's an excellent list of awards. One can see almost whole pages with 2 1s and nothing else, and some good higher degrees. Every indication that our students have really worked hard and that they've been really well taught. And that's what matters in this university far more than any of these league tables. It shows that we are doing our job. Second is to welcome those who have come to support them today in the back of the hall and in the galleries. We know that this is the culmination of many years of support from relatives, parents and friends, and we know how very valuable, indeed indispensable that is. So we're very glad that they've come here today to see the culmination. We hope that they will consider themselves friends of Hull University, continue to take an interest in it, to encourage people to come here, to come and visit us from time to time, and to support us in every way in which universities now need support in these very difficult times. And then lastly, I'd very much like to welcome the civic representatives who have come here and are on the platform. We have the Deputy Lord Mayor of Kingston-upon-Hull, by whose hospitality we are here today, and who's given us such tremendous support from the city in all our relations with the city of Kingston-upon-Hull. We have also the mayors of Cleethorpes, Glandon and East Yorkshire. And we greatly value their interest in what we are doing and their support. We have very strong regional connections, and we're very happy that those in the regions near us should feel that this is a university which they can support, in which they can take an interest. Thank you very much for coming. Now, I have great pleasure in inviting the Vice-Chancellor to address the congregation.
My Lord and Chancellor, honorary graduates, civic representatives, distinguished guests, you, all of you, are new graduates, ladies and gentlemen. Will you allow me to join, on behalf of the administrative and academic staff of the university, the congratulations which the Chancellor has just offered to all of you who have come to the end of your first degrees or your second degrees, in some cases in your third degrees, and in Dr. Graby's case I couldn't care to count how many degrees. At all events, whether you are just taking a first degree or a more advanced one, this event marks the end of the beginning and no more of your connection with the university, and you are very heartily welcome amongst us. As are your and now our extended family, whom we see packed to the doors in this hall and in both the galleries. We wish that we could accede to the many requests that we receive for extra tickets for these ceremonies. As you see, and as indeed you feel from the temperature of the room, we have gone about as far as it is possible to go while the ceremonies retain their present form and, as we hope, their human scale, with each graduand presented to the Chancellor in the style you have just seen. But this is our occasion to thank you, and perhaps also through the graduands to thank you, family, friends, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, lots of others, for the help, financial and other, which you have given and which has been indispensable in the attainment of today's happy outcome. May I next say, so that they shall feel at ease and feel rewarded, I hope, for the fidelity with which they attend all these ceremonies, official but not more than official farewell to two of the Pro-Vice-Chancellors well known to many of you graduating today who are about to leave us. Professor Alan Pugh, who retires shortly, Fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and Dr. Kirby, whom you heard as a presenter, who moves shortly as Executive Pro-Vice-Chancellor to Manchester Metropolitan University. May I welcome also, in her new guise as Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Professor Judith Rees, the first woman Pro-Vice-Chancellor this university has ever had. We were speaking in another context yesterday, and again this morning, of all that local support has meant to this university. And the name of Colonel Reckitt, upon whose long association with the university we were dwelling, serves as a reminder, as Reckitt and Coleman will in a later portion of this speech, of the origins of our university, which owes its whole existence to local enterprise and, I may say, generosity, as well as local needs. The presence of the civic representatives to whose attendance the Chancellor has just referred reinforces the same message. That is to say, that we have an acute sense of our intimate and to us profitable relations with Hull, Humberside, Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. Part of our purpose on this ever-memorable occasion is to present you, our new graduates, and our new honorary graduates, with some picture of the university's work and life and place in the community. And as the scale of our operation grows, so, believe me, it becomes no easier year by year to know what to select from the sheaves of offerings which might be put before you. I do not claim for this list anything more than that it touches upon some of the notable events of the last university year and gives some idea of the span of our activities. I refer first to the development of the postgraduate medical school, the most important single new enterprise we have undertaken in this university in 20 years. Next to the development of the Institute for Chemistry in Industry, which is part of our way of marking the strength of our connection with the chemical industry, which of course means so much to this part of the world. It is especially associated with Reckitt and Colman. The visit of the Duchess of Kent for the excellent concert organised and provided by our Department of Music in aid of the Jacqueline Dupre Memorial Trust, which helps talented but disabled young musicians. The opening of Taylor Court. I say that with apologies to any of you who happened to be caught in the early stages of the Troubles, now we hope decisively past. The opening of the Fenner Control Laboratory by Dr. Peter Barker, whom we welcome on the platform sitting just to the left as you look at him, of the Treasurer, the former chairman of Fenner, a firm which has been extremely helpful and generous to us in so many ways, and who comes to us now as our new Pro-Chancellor. Sitting next to him, Dr. Black, is also long associated with Fenner, and on the other side of the Chancellor, Dr. Farrell. And they have done us and do us every day wonderful and indispensable service in the university, as in different spheres do the members of the Court and Council. I mention this because for most students in the departments, there is no special reason to have a direct knowledge of the work of the Court and the Council. But let me say that there are few universities which profit more directly from the help which the lay people give us in every sphere of our university life. And they represent, by their wholly unpaid service, one of the most important and indeed creditable and glorious strands of British public life, the rendering of unpaid service by amateurs, by which I mean not people unskilled in their work, I mean people who are doing the job for the love of it. To go back to my list, the admirable exhibitions held in the University Art Gallery and the permanent exhibition there, of which we are reminded by the death a few days ago of Dr. Malcolm Easton, first curator of the university's art collection. He was extremely proud of his honorary degree from the University of Hull, as was Dr. Alec Horsley, who died recently and whose memory we salute. We remember also Professor Stanley Denison, Vice-Chancellor in the 1970s, who has marked his affection for the university by leaving a substantial legacy, which we hope we shall be able to put to good service in the musical life of the university, one of his great and abiding loves. It would not be right on this wholly non-partisan occasion to dwell lengthily upon the government's recently announced plans for the reform of student unions. I do wish, however, on the university's behalf to say this, and I say it this afternoon with redoubled pleasure, in the presence of the two university officers who received their degrees in front of you just a few minutes ago. We are singularly fortunate in this university in our friendly and collaborative relations with the Students' Union. It isn't invariably so. I dare say it hasn't always been so here, and it certainly isn't invariably so elsewhere. But long may this state of affairs flourish in this university, because it is in fact an integral part of our arrangements. I give two or three illustrations from different parts of our university's life. We're shortly to acquire the long-coveted all-weather pitch. And that would scarcely be possible but for the handsome grant which the Students' Union has offered. The activities of the RAG Committee, as you all know, are looked upon with mingled amusement, trepidation, joy or resignation by the citizens of Hull and indeed by the students themselves. But that enterprise this year has produced the unprecedented sum of £30,000. And because the list wouldn't be obvious, I hope you won't mind my taking 5 examples at random from the charities which our student body has supported in this last year. The Hull and East Riding Talking Magazine for the Blind, Hull Homeless and Rootless Project, the National Deaf Children's Society, Children in Need, the Cystic Fibrosis Trust, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And although we have referred to this, my Lord and Chancellor, on other occasions, it would not be right to let Degree Day pass without saying what an immense sense of pride is felt by everybody in the university and by countless of its former students abroad in the fact that ours is the only educational institution anywhere in the United Kingdom which should have been honoured on account of the work of the student body in Husso by the award of the Queen's Gold Medal marking Her Majesty's 40 years on the throne. And the day last November when the students from Husso went to receive their award from the Queen was most certainly one of the great days in this university's history. Our student numbers, as you all know from the evidence around you in the departments, grow by leaps and bounds. They've gone up by 50% in 6 years and 25% in 3. Indeed, in the normal span of most of you in the university. In those same 3 years in which most of you have been with us, our postgraduate numbers have risen by no less than 50%, and our overseas student numbers by no less than 30%. We shall have about 8,500 full-time equivalent students next year, and about 10,500 by 1996-7. And in uttering those figures, which must seem staggering to those who have a long acquaintance with the university, bearing in mind that it was not until the year 1957 that we even got to a total of 1,000 students, let alone the 10,500 I've just referred to. But to those we have to add almost 15,000 students on short courses taught here in Hull or at 70 other places in Yorkshire, Humberside and Lincolnshire. 1/4 of our students are postgraduates. Over 30% of those who take their first degrees with us go on to postgraduate study. Our local recruitment is substantial and increasing. We constitute far and away the largest research enterprise within many miles of here, and our research rankings in the assessment of 1992 are, to everybody's satisfaction, higher than those of 1989. I pause on this, almost the last occasion, I think, upon which Professor Pugh will be present in his official capacity, to say how deeply indebted the university is to him and his colleagues on the research committee for all that they have done in that direction. We are the proud proprietors of 3,500 student residential places, and we are the managers of more than 1,000 above that. We shall soon be a total of 5,000 in our residential places. That constitutes an enormous investment and a very considerable burden on the university's finances. But I shouldn't perhaps use the word burden, because it's a task, it's a duty, perhaps that's a better word, undertaken with much satisfaction on our part, because the provision of accommodation for a large number of our students represents something about the way in which we try to regard it. That is to say, as part of our extended family, and as people for whom it is our duty to provide the opportunity to live with other students and in a recognizable unit, so that you don't just feel that you come here at 9 or 10 of a morning, absorb some instruction during the day as if you were blotting paper, and are then squeezed dry of it somehow during finals. I mentioned Reckitt and Coleman in 2 connections already, and here is a third. Outside, as you leave the hall, you will see a fine stand loaned to us by Reckitt and Coleman. The careers service here is indefatigable. It keeps in touch with everybody. And it has been in touch with all our graduates of 1992, that's to say your predecessors by 1 year. 6 months after their graduation, January 1993, only 8.8% were still seeking employment. I hope that won't sound to you an offensive or indeed insensitive way in which to put the point. I said only 8.8%, not in order to indicate that it doesn't matter about 8.8%, but just to remind us all that that is far below the figure we commonly see in the newspapers, and I must add it's well below the average for most other universities. The league tables to which the Chancellor just referred are, at least in this respect, published, and unlike some of the others, they do rely more or less on ascertainable facts. The league table for 1991 employment, the last one which is available, shows that Hull is 8th among all British universities in the employability of its graduates, and we are confident that when the figures for 1992 are available, as they soon will be, we shall have done at least as well. And you'll place those figures, I'm sure, in the context of two other important facts: the length and the depth of the recession, and the greatly increased number of graduates coming onto the market as a consequence of the rapid expansion of intake of 3 and 4 years ago. Now, during this present year, 70 companies have come to us to interview for recruitment on this campus, and indeed there are some of them still here at the moment doing that. It is the habit of our careers service never, ever to close its books on a Hull graduate. May I encourage you, as you leave the hall, to look at the stand and see some of the careers to which our graduates go. And it has occurred to us that there may, among the hundreds and hundreds of you this afternoon, still be one or two who are seeking jobs. Now, I see from your faces that it is just possible that this speculation was not altogether misguided. If that is so, may I say that the Director of the Careers Service, John Franks, and his colleagues in the service have prepared packages of material available immediately outside the hall, which will put you into direct contact with the services which we can offer here and now. And to repeat, there will be no limit to what the Careers Service shall try to do on your behalf for as long as you wish it. I want to say one other word in a different context about our importance to the local community, having confessed the great importance of the local community and the municipalities to us. The assets of the university have increased greatly in recent years. Our income, which next year will run at about £55 million, has doubled in 5 years. That 55 millions represents money which would not otherwise be spent in Hull or Humberside. We employ, believe it or not, 1,800 staff, almost all of whom are recruited locally and all of whom live locally. We buy as much as we can, and that is a great deal, by way of services and supplies in the city and the region as a conscious policy. Dare I say it with a blush, in your presence we bring here as students people of high talent, many of whom become so fond of the place that they stay to make their careers in Hull or Humberside or North Yorkshire or Lincolnshire. In addition, in ways in which I do not care to inquire too closely, our students spend about £20 million a year locally. Well, 1/10 of it in the John McCarthy bar, 1/10 on food, and the rest I shouldn't care to answer for. We, by our presence as a university with strong international links, make the city and the whole region far better known than it otherwise could be. We have no fewer than 100 links with universities overseas. There's not a country of the EC with which we're not constantly exchanging students, as many of you know from your own direct experience. We have friendly connections all over Canada and the United States and the Caribbean and Sub-Saharan Africa and the Mediterranean and the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia and Korea and Hong Kong and Australasia. There's hardly a part of the world with which we're not connected. There are students from 90 countries, many of whom you've seen cross the stage this afternoon, among your body. All of that is a source of pride to us and, I hope, a source of satisfaction in a wider circle. We're proud to be one of the 4 British universities which will inaugurate in August the new scheme whereby we hope mobility among students of the Commonwealth will be enhanced. We have one of our research staff who, as many of you know, has done great things, as indeed you have by contributing, and the academic staff of the university by contributing, for the deprived universities in Albania. We have a member of staff at the moment assisting in the rebuilding of one of the finest of all the old East African universities, Makerere, in Uganda. And so the tale goes on. We are converting into scholarships to bring here overseas students who could not otherwise come to Hull some of the money which we earn from the teaching of each generation of overseas students. It's one of the joys of my job to visit the overseas students and the alumni of this university in this country. I've hardly ever met one who did not feel a sense of strong loyalty and affection towards the university, and that is what we hope you will feel too. We and you are trustees in every sense of that noble word. It is not simply a matter for those who try to manage the university. It is a matter for the whole university, including all of you, and if I may say so to you, in the balcony at the bottom half of this hall, to all of you, the extended family of the university. You graduating from here are the privileged classes. You have enjoyed opportunities which are wholly beyond the imagination of most of your contemporaries in other parts of the world, and which were indeed beyond the imagination of many of your parents and grandparents. And it's for you and for us to do our best by that inheritance for the sake of the present and the next generations, whether we're trustees for the estate, for the library, the laboratories, for the wider purposes, fearlessness in the pursuit of truth, the handing on of the torch of learning which you will see upon your degree certificates. We have to learn, and you have to teach us about, the new techniques. How much do we, all of us, owe to inspired teachers, sometimes our parents or aunts or uncles, sometimes brothers and sisters, and then teachers in the more normal sense at school or in the university? They represent what we hope you will represent in your generation, a spirit of generosity and imparting, and an anxiety, indeed a determination to take other people, their cultures, their languages, their civilizations, their outlook seriously, just as we should hope you would take your own discipline seriously. Well, this is the end of this summer's degree days in this country, though we have to move to our Lincoln degree days on Friday of next week. I do not desire to intrude on this splendid occasion, but I must utter one sentence of foreboding. I think, like most of those with some responsibility for the future of our universities, I have become convinced that unless we can get a new stream of funding into British universities somehow, we shall not much longer be able to sustain the standards of teaching, of pastoral care, of accommodation, of the library, the laboratory, which I hope and believe you have enjoyed in your generation, and which we of an older generation rightly expect on your behalf. The process of driving down the unit of resource, as it's called, that's to say the amount of money which is brought by each student each year for the academic part of the university, must have a limit in common sense. To call it simply efficiency gain, as if there was nothing to look forward to but more of the same, is going to deny the essential purposes of universities before we are very much older. And we are badly in need, not only of calm and reasonable informed discussion, and of a greater measure of trust on the part of those who decide our fate, but we're equally in need of all the support, informed, thoughtful and helpful, which we can receive from you, our wider community. They had a wonderful expression, the learned men of 500 or so years ago, scattered as they were over Europe, corresponding often in Latin, meeting but rarely, travelling about as best they could. They used to call their network of contacts the invisible college, because they had no building. There wasn't a university, there wasn't an instruction, there wasn't a set of lectures and tutorials and seminars. They nevertheless felt a strong sense of contact and fellowship. That is exactly what we hope you will feel towards this university, that there will be this invisible college of our Hull graduates, honorary and more, those of who've earned their degrees in the ordinary way. We should also like to feel that you'll have some of the characteristics of stretching out the hand of generosity, which I've tried to describe and to which there are so many more manifestations. To borrow a phrase from a distinguished honorary graduate yesterday, who happens to be the president of the Commonwealth of Learning in Vancouver, let us congratulate you most warmly, say again to all your parents and extended family how greatly we valued your presence and welcome you as lifetime members of our Commonwealth of Learning.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor, for that most optimistic address, and thank you also for your leadership and immensely hard work for the University over the last year. I now have pleasure in inviting Dr. Barbara Mills to address the congregation.
My Lord and Chancellor, it is a great privilege for me to be asked to express on behalf of all the honorary graduates our thanks and indeed great pride in receiving the honour which has been conferred on us today. May I say that it gives me particular personal pleasure because the organisation which I head, the Crown Prosecution Service, has excellent and ongoing links with this great university. But I'm also here to do what many others have done before me, to congratulate all the graduates today, whether it's their first, second, third, or almost innumerable degree which they have acquired, and to wish you all good luck and every success in the future, because you've got so much ahead of you. Sometimes it may look a little daunting, but it's always going to be exciting and challenging. And I think that your sense of fulfilment in the future will depend greatly on what you put into it. You'll need to retain, as I know to my cost, a sense of humour, a sense of proportion, and that, I think, will get you the most pleasure from whatever it is you choose to do in the future. And I would seek to encourage you today, when you're, most of you, on the threshold of your careers, to be very positive and to put absolutely every effort into it, and I'm sure you'll achieve all that you want to achieve. Now, today I had a rare invitation, which was to speak to this audience on a subject of my choice. I say it's rare because normally I'm telling everyone about the Crown Prosecution Service, how many lawyers we've got, what it costs, how many officers, and so on. But today I have this opportunity, freedom you might call it, to think about something else. And so I tried to think back to some of the lessons which I've learnt in my career, some of them learnt fairly much the hard way, which I thought might be helpful to you. Edward Gibbon said, everyone gets two kinds of education, one which is provided by others, and another which comes from yourself. We all know when we were being educated in our school days that we struggled with the 3 R's. Well, you've all graduated well beyond the 3 R's, but I'd like to suggest that there's actually a postgraduate course which is called the 3 C's. And I would describe the 3 C's as being checking, communicating, and caring. So let me just start with checking and give you a rather revealing personal anecdote as to why I think that whatever you're going to do in future, the rule always is check, check, and check again. When I started as a very young and inexperienced barrister, I was given the sort of case which young and inexperienced barristers are given to cut their teeth on. It was a minor road accident at some traffic lights. My client was absolutely adamant that he had been driving perfectly. I have to say that other people didn't seem to share the same view, and indeed their view was that he'd been going far too fast and jumped the lights. His view was that the gentleman who had run into him had undoubtedly done that, and he had passed through the lights on green as he should have done. As I say, there were a number of bystanders who didn't agree with my client, and it wasn't looking a very satisfactory case. My client's view was that the reason that the other gentleman had been driving so quickly was that he had been late for work, a not uncommon phenomenon for those of you who live in London and see people jumping lights the entire time. So I stood up rather tentatively and inquired if this was the case, and he had been late for work. There was that ominous pause which you learn to discover when you're a barrister, means you've asked an absolutely cretinous question. And the man said, "But it was Sunday." And why had I gone wrong? Because I'd only looked at the date and I hadn't looked at the day of the week. I have to say that I try not to make the same mistake again, and checking dates and days of the week has stood me in excellent use thereafter. I have actually got to conferences on the right day, despite the fact that the programmes inviting me have sometimes given the wrong date, and so on and so on. And so that's just a little minor example of why I would put into your first list of postgraduate courses, checking, checking and checking again. What about the second one, communicating? Whatever we do, we've got to communicate to all people. And actually, communication is a two-way process. It's as much listening as being able to pass on information. And to be informed, you need to be able to listen to what other people are saying and be alert to and aware of the issues which affect you in your job or your profession. And I think that seeking other people's views makes one much better informed, and indeed you need to keep your colleagues informed in order to motivate and to stimulate what is so crucial in life, which is some form of team spirit, whether you're working in a very small organisation or a very large one. Media relations, of course, are the widest extension of the whole question of communications and the need for openness so that people know what you're doing. And I personally believe that openness and honesty inspires respect and understanding, and it's equally important whether you're in the private sector with a product or a service to sell or in the public sector. The Crown Prosecution Service is a public service, and I have laid great emphasis on the duty, as I see it, for us to be open to the public, and I also see the benefits gained from it. Better understanding, better support, better informed, and hopefully more accurate media. I have to confess that there are some problems which go with it, but I think they are worth bearing. When I arrived at the CPS only 15 months ago, and we instituted this rather change of approach, we were then receiving 250 letters a year annually from MPs. In this rather short period of time, they've gone up to 850, and as I have to sign them all personally, this has become quite a major job. Similarly, we've had far more letters of inquiry from the general public, but I think that this is right, and we've just got to cope with it. And when you're communicating, really, the thing that we have to do is to use plain language. Regardless of whatever specialisation we are in, jargon exists, and I think jargon alienates. And may I say that as a lawyer. Lawyers are notorious for jargon, because some of the other professions aren't free from it either. And one of the particular challenges which I have tried to take on is to simplify people's understanding of the law by introducing plain and everyday language which everyone uses. When I go into courts, which I do regularly now, to listen to cases, not to participate, it gives you a very different view of life. And I have to say, I find the language used there unhelpful. So any law graduates here today who feel like joining this great new cause for plain English in law, in statutes and the court, I'd be delighted to get their support. The third of the C's, caring. I think you need to be aware and care all the time about the effect your actions have on other people. Just think, if you would reverse roles, how you would feel if you're being treated the way you are treating people. And you need to care about the work and the social pressures also on all of those people who are around you. I've made it clear that I care passionately about fairness, which incorporates, of course, equality of sex, race, religion and disability. And my service recognises this, and we've introduced a large number of initiatives to ensure that everyone, whether you're female or male, black or white, disabled or able-bodied, everyone has the same equal and fair opportunity. And I think that if you do become a manager, and it's surprising how many people do become managers and do so very early in their careers, it's your job to nurture and develop the talents of everyone, because everyone has something to offer. But care doesn't just work in the workplace. Most important, you need to take care and time for family and for friends. It may become quite easy sometimes to put all your concentration on your career, but your family and your friends are absolutely vital in supporting you in your chosen work. That's particularly true, perhaps, in the early days and also when the going gets tough, and that can happen throughout your life. And it is a great pleasure to see today so many friends and family, despite, of course, the fact that this hall can't accommodate everyone who would like to be here, supporting you on this enormously important day in which you all want to celebrate. And may I say that I too have the support of my husband, who's here today, and I'm delighted that he too can share a very important day with me, because he supported me through thick and thin, and we've had a splendid time together. And I hope you too will have the same sort of support and happy family that I've been lucky to be blessed with. So, can I say this? There seem to be 6 essential qualities which many people have identified as being the key to a truly successful life in the total round, because that's what we all hope to achieve. It's been identified that these are the 6 qualities you need: sincerity, integrity, humility, courtesy, wisdom, and charity. Perhaps we aren't all blessed with all those 6, but they're quite important ones to strive to achieve. And I hope that as you are now, most of you just on the thresholds of your careers, that some of this advice, which I must say I have gleaned from other people and tried to act on, will serve you in good stead in future. As I say, I wish you all the very best of luck in your careers, and I hope that you have the good fortune to enjoy that really happy, rounded and delightful life, both in your careers and in your families, which I've been fortunate enough to enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara Mills, for that interesting and thought-provoking speech. Now it's time to close this congregation and the congregations for this week. But before I do so, I'd like to refer to the fact that this is the last degree congregation at which Andrew Dibb, our organ player, will be functioning. He has graduated, as you know, as a Bachelor of Music this week, and he goes to higher things. But I think we mustn't let him go without expressing our appreciation of his playing, which we on this platform have heard 4 times this week, many times in previous congregations, always of the highest standard, this only being part, mind you, of his contribution to the musical life of the university, and to wish him the very best in the future. Would you like to express your appreciation? Then I do declare the congregation closed.